I'm going to talk about two startups briefly. So Joe is a techie, like most of the people in this room. He's got an idea, like some of us, and some savings, like a few of you. Joe's idea is simple. That's me in a couple of hours' time, by the way. But when you can't drive and you have your car, you can book somebody via an app, and a driver will drive you home. Joe also has a plan. He tells his friends, they're very supportive. His plan is to hire a freelancer, use his savings, and go to market in 6 months. Now, it's 10 months later. The app's ready. It launched, but it didn't go very well. So, obviously, he's frustrated and broke, and he needs a job. Now, as far as I can tell, what went wrong is that he focused on his solution, not the problem, and he left it very late to talk to customers, which moves us to our second hero, which is Maria. Now, she's 23, she's an art person, she spotted the problem somewhere else, so she has a dilemma. And the problem is very different from art. She grew up in a society of everybody talking about healthy eating, but she didn't notice any real change. Maria is passionate about the problem, and she wants to change people's habits. She doesn't know where to start, so she looks for advice online. And the method she finds is for validating problems. So she starts by listing customer segments and by trying to define the problem. Next, she focuses on one of the segments, and she defines the problem as young families struggle for time, they're concerned with healthy eating, and she interviews a few of them. Now, during the interviews, she finds out, yes, people struggle for time, they're concerned about healthy eating, but also most of them actually lack the skills and they don't enjoy cooking. So what's next? She changes her problem based on what she's learned. She comes up with a solution, and she tries to validate it. Now, her solution is a concierge service where she offers products, recipes, and training, and within 12 weeks, she makes 8 sales. So what was different? She was passionate about the problem, not about the solution. She tested everything on every step, and she learned and adapted. Now, 5 minutes is too short for this, but if you're interested about it, come and talk to me later. And that's all from me. Thank you.
So my talk is on empathy, the secret sauce of Agile delivery. Now, I don't know if it really is a secret because we all practice it, and there's definitely no sauce involved. So I've been thinking a lot about the people and the teams that I've been working with, especially at Equal Experts, and wondering why some teams are a joy to work with and others less so. So I think teams that are a joy to work for are also naturally high-performing teams. I would like to share a few of the thoughts on the role that empathy may play in this. So a quick definition of empathy. Empathy is really the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. A slightly more detailed definition, empathy depends on not only our ability to identify others' emotions, but also to feel the emotions ourselves as if we were that person. So experiencing the emotion is key to empathy. Unfortunately, the way we handle emotions at work has been heavily influenced by the history and culture of the Industrial Revolution, along with its narrow focus on efficiency and productivity. We have been socially trained to believe that some emotions are good and other emotions are bad, and that some emotions are appropriate to the workplace and others are not. As a consequence of this, we tend to suppress and conceal and mask many of our emotions when we are at work. This can lead to poor motivation, poor achievement, poor social interactions, and at worst, long-term psychological issues, both with the teamwork and ourselves. The push for efficiency has also had an adverse effect on the way that we run our projects. For example, in the world of waterfall, team members were treated as siloed black box resources. The individuals doing the work had little contact with the stakeholders or the end users of the product. The emotional risk of failure was high, and there was little chance to develop empathy. Agile methodologies made a good attempt at increasing the chances of empathy, not only within the team itself, but also empathy with the business and empathy for the end users. But is there any real-world evidence that empathy actually makes a difference to teams? Well, in 2012, Google started a project called Project Aristotle. It was led by a researcher called Julia Rozovsky. The project spent 2 years looking into what contributes to high-performing teams. They collected detailed data from over 180 teams at Google. They looked at team members' backgrounds, their education attainments, their personalities and hobbies, their gender balance in the team, and whether the team socialized with each other outside of the workplace. Although they found that some of these factors actually made a difference, there was no significant correlation with team performance. After 1 year of not finding anything of significance, they went back to the drawing board. They evaluated scientific papers in the fields of psychology and sociology, looking for something that they might have missed. A common theme that emerged from the papers was the concept of group norms. So group norms are emergent behaviors that occur when individuals group together in teams. They are usually unspoken and unplanned. So they went back and looked at the data again, and where needed, collected new data. They found 4 group norms that were common in high-performing teams. So impact and meaning. Did the work have an impact on the end users, and did the team feel it had a meaning and purpose? Was there clarity in the team roles and goals? And did the team have the characteristic of dependability? However, they also found another group norm that was critical to high performance. Without it being present, none of the other norms mattered. And that norm was the concept of psychological safety. So what did they say about psychological safety? So these are direct quotes from the report. So they said, team members trust and understand each other's emotions and care for each other's well-being. This is actually a very good definition of empathy. They also said team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. So, and that's my final slide. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about diversity. Why me? As you had just heard from Simon, DevOps is dead, so I need to get into a new game. So we're a company of people, so I thought there was 2 things about diversity that were important, the cultural stuff and the commercial stuff. And as we're a company that care about people, and we want to work in cool teams, I threw a few ideas down on here. Different people are great to work with. You can have a range of cultures. We want to represent the workforce that we live in. It's a global world now, and we should kind of work to represent that a little bit more. Learning, getting multiple perspectives, and ultimately it's just a lot more fun. So like the cultural stuff of diversity is super important. And then we're a business and we need to make money. So, we should look at why that's important as well. And it turns out that there's a bunch of reports, you can go and Google them. I think the biggest one is the McKinsey diversity thing from 2 years ago, 2015. And it turns out that teams that are gender diverse are more likely to outperform their counterparts by 15%. And then if you make teams ethnically diverse as well, they're likely to outperform by 35%. So when people give you arguments for why we should do this, it just, you want to make more money, right? That's what we're all aiming to do here. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing at EE. And actually the why me was we have a lot of conversations in EE, or you see this diversity channel, and we throw things around. And I want us to actually start doing stuff. So I organized a session and I invited a bunch of people. I think we had 20 of us. We're an agile organization, so I wrote post-its on the wall. And these are a bunch of things that we all said, and I tried to mediate the session. And then there was a bunch of actions at the end, and I'll have a look at those shortly. But it was a really productive session. It was really good. Lots and lots of different viewpoints, and it's a subject that everyone is really, really passionate about. So then Surfraz led a refinement session, and this focused on something called Project Include. And this is their blurb on the website, which is really great. But ultimately, it's a framework for how we work on kind of starting this process, whatever it is, and how we make things more inclusive, how we become a diverse organization, kind of strategies to approach that. And we're going to start looking at that more and more. So that was our starting point. And the actions that came out of this were coming up with a diversity charter. So what we actually mean about that, what the vision is, what we want to try and achieve. Issuing more status reports, so everyone asks us, how many people do we look to hire? What kind of people do we interview? What failure rates do we get? Because as an industry, we want to, get more women here. We want, ethnically diverse organisation as well. We want to create safe spaces, which goes back to what Surfraz was just saying, and Thomas kept reiterating that our first session was how do we generate that psychological safety, and I think that's something that we are working on actively. Focus on team diversity, so how do we do that within our teams? We're talking about quotas as well at the moment. Hiring initiatives, so changing job specifications. It turns out that lots of women won't apply for jobs because they just feel that they're not meeting the criteria that are set out there. So if we can change the language that we use, maybe we can invite more people to come and interview for those positions. It turns out that we didn't actually have like an apply here page on the website, which is actually quite funny. So a big thing we can do is event sponsorships, which we actually already do a little bit of. And another really nice thing was generating groups within the organization so that you can find a group that you actually relate to and go and talk to those people. And we can get more feedback loops within the organization for that stuff. So some of the stuff we've done, and it came up in the welcome video earlier, was the code bar session that we did, which came from Surfraz, which was really great. And I got to contribute there, which was a fantastic evening. There was the sponsorship of Women's in Technology Awards earlier this year. I'm sure there's other stuff as well, but I can't keep on top of everything. Some of the things we're going to start doing, so next week, I think 10 of us are going to the Women of Silicon Roundabout conference. And in June, a few of us are going to go to the Women in Technology event too. So the only other thing I want to say is I want everyone here to try and get involved in the conversation if you can or if you want to. So Slack is a really good starting point for that. And then we're having another session next Tuesday night in Brock Street at 6 p.m. And you're all welcome to come along and get involved. And please just come and ask me questions after this or in the pub later. And I'd love to get more people around. And that's me. Thank you very much.
So I've been a delivery lead with Equal Experts for the last couple of years. For the last year, I've had the privilege of working with the most awesome BA. Marcel Britch is somewhere in the audience, back there. So if you don't know what he looks like, there's a photo of him, so you can find and embarrass him later. It's been really fun working with Marcel, and one particular fun aspects is that we were comparing notes about how we visualize the scope of our different deliveries. And comparing notes from different client engagements, we found that we had some similarities in the different approaches that we were taking. And what we also noticed that, these are some examples, the approaches that we were taking in visualizing scope were a bit different to what's in the standard Agile toolbox. And it made us wonder, how do other people do this? And are there other commonalities between the way other people visualize scope that is similar to how we're doing it? Before we look at that, though, let's think about why. Why is it important to visualize scope? So Simon earlier talked about maps and the importance of being able to visualize your terrain. And that's one of the things we found really helpful with these kind of diagrams. When you're a delivery lead or a lead BA and you're working, particularly in a new environment, you often get asked really, really tough questions, like this poor boy in the picture here. For those that don't know the picture, it's from the English Civil War, and he's being asked where his father is, or was. So we don't get asked life and death questions like this, but our clients generally ask us really tough questions about why have we done a certain thing, or what are we going to do next? We find that having different visualizations of scope provides us a big picture that we can easily move around with the client in and help answer these kind of questions. It also really helps, we found, with providing good communication to different stakeholders, because they can see at different levels of granularity what it is we're doing and why. One of the key questions that comes up time and time again in a delivery is, what are we going to deliver next? So what is going to be our next slice? We find that having a big picture visualization of the entire scope of what we need to deliver is a really helpful way of trying to make those decisions. When you're trying to figure out what it is that you're going to include in your next slice, there's several other sub-questions that you need to get to. One is dependencies. So which of these dependencies are we going to tackle next? We also need to be able to easily see where are our risks and how do those risks appear in context to other stories or epics that we've got to deliver. Which are the epics that when we open them up, there's going to be monstrous complexity that we need to tackle early. Or there might be some epics that on the face of it, they may just be quite small on the surface, but when you start unpacking them, they explode into a mountain of user stories. An overarching question is, how can we optimize for delivery? I read this article by Dan North a few days ago, and it really rung true with me that a lot of what we're doing is trying to help the team and help the client optimize the rapid, sustainable flow of value. And we've found, Marcel and I, that having these kind of visualizations is a really, really useful tool for doing that. One of the fantastic things about being part of the Equal Experts Network is that we get trusted to be working with clients and using our own different approaches and adapting our own approaches to suit the needs and the context of the client. So whilst Marcel and I have had some commonality in the way we approach this way of visualizing scope, we're interested in how other people tackle this kind of problem. So we'd really like to know from you folk here, how do you visualize scope? How do you look at the scope of your delivery? You maybe use these kind of common approaches. So you may just have all your scope in a Jira backlog. You may use story maps. You may have a user journey or a service journey that helps you navigate what you need to do next. Or you may use something else like this matrix I did on a previous project. It's quite likely you use a combination of these things to answer the kind of questions that I talked about earlier. Marcel and I have found different types of diagrams that aren't in the standard Agile toolbox really useful for answering these kind of tough questions. So we'd really like you to get in touch with us and just tell us, how do you visualize your delivery scope? Thanks very much.
So yeah, I'm going to talk about I'm happy when I'm not fed up. Secrets to happiness in Agile. We've had a few secret sources and things already, but I'll give it a go. So in my current role, I spend a lot of time working with teams and helping them get back control of their product backlogs, their sprints, and generally their service. And I've seen happiness, or at least lack of fed upness, seems to be highly correlated with their delivery capabilities. For those of you that recognize the person on the screen, you can infer the empirical evidence and scientific approach to this talk by the guy who came up with this quote originally. But nonetheless, the team morale was, the improvement in team morale from these performing teams was impossible not to notice. And what I'm going to look at first is the fed upness. So we're going to see what's bothering people to start with. And to protect the innocent, I've kind of used some stock photos from local newspapers to protect the innocent. So, product owners. So the product owners, what are they actually trying to do? Well, they're trying to get features and software out to stakeholders and customers. Why do they get fed up? Well, they get fed up with the business not putting effort into story elucidation. The business and stakeholders might have a huge shopping list of stuff that's almost impossible to deliver. And the stakeholders would be generally focused on cost rather than value. And so they're fed up now. And some of the negative behaviors that come out of this would be over-promising to the business and then negotiating quality away with the team and having features that are poorly thought through and can change at the last minute and spring in surprises on team. And there's a quote that I used for this one as an example of this. There was a product manager that is Vaughan. I think Vaughan's in here somewhere. I saw him earlier. So Vaughan and I worked with this guy, and one of the things he said was, "I can't sell stability." And that was the thing he was worried about. And in the end, the project tanked because it wasn't stable. So the next lot of guys, Scrum Masters. Now, what do these guys want to do? Well, Scrum Masters want to see the team and the project succeed. Okay, so why would they be fed up? Well, a lot of the times you might see them being purely assessed on points completed or features delivered, this sort of thing. Nothing about wider things like empathy and team spirit and things like that, just story points. And they're pressured to give up their Scrum and Agile disciplines to get more things through the door due to the time pressures. And so they're fed up now, right? So the negative behaviors come out from this would be, seeking to make the estimates fit the deadlines. Oh yeah, look, we've got a week to do this. How long is it really going to do this feature? Are you sure? It's 2 weeks, right? No, it's 2 weeks. And then they'll nag about estimates overrunning, and they'll do things like calling their team heroes after making them work 7 weekends straight and things like that. And one of the quotes from these guys that I've heard is, deadlines are motivating. So developers, my favorite topic. So what do developers want to do? What do they want to do with their lives? They want to deliver software, right? Write software. But they also want to stay out of management. They don't want to get involved in that, right? That's for the grown-ups. So why are they fed up on an Agile team? Well, they're fed up because they've been asked to abandon their principles and JFDI. Quality is deemed unimportant, and they get called resources, as we've seen before. So they're fed up now. So what negative behaviours might we see from this? Well, because the PO and the Scrum Master have told them to JFDI, they're quite happy. They don't want to get involved in management. They're the grown-ups. They've been told to do it. They're absolved from responsibility about technical quality, and this means that nobody's actually looking at it. And one of the quotes I had from these guys was, you make a convincing case for testing the code, but I'm not sure the business will buy it. QAs, again, these guys want to ensure quality through the system. They're fed up because they're the ones who are solely responsible for quality, and they get lumbered with testing and build and all this sort of stuff as well. And they get down this cycle of just doing what's asked of them. So we've got all these fed up people together, and we get this negative reinforcement of this feedback loop. And what we really want to do is bring in things like classic Scrum stuff, like collaboration, being open, discipline, actually thinking of a definition of done, definition of ready, professionalism, actually challenging, saying, no, we can't release it if we don't know it works, stop that. And trust, knowing that everybody has their own agenda and they're fighting for that, and everybody fighting for their own agenda makes the software good and the project successful. And we can spin that around and make everybody happy again.